Imagine discovering that someone knows everywhere you go, every stop you make, every street you drive down, every place you visit. They're already aware of it. Then one day, you find the reason. A GPS tracker hidden on your car. Fear takes over, but instead of staying silent, you choose to fight back. You walk into a government office, explain that you're being stalked, and tell authorities that you're afraid for your life. You officially report the man responsible and ask for protection, believing you've finally taken the first step toward safety. As you leave the building, you expect life to slowly return to normal. Instead, within minutes, everything changes forever. This is the heartbreaking story of Esmeralda Moronta, a devoted mother, talented baker, and determined entrepreneur, whose final act was asking for help from the very system she trusted to protect her. Esmeralda Moronta was born on December 22, 1994, in the Dominican Republic. Those who knew her described her as kind, hardworking, and full of positive energy. She had a natural ability to make people feel comfortable, whether they had known her for years or had only just met her. But her childhood wasn't easy. When she was only a little girl, her father died in a tragic accident, leaving her mother to raise the family alone. Determined to give her children a better future, her mother worked long hours to provide for them, while relatives helped care for the children whenever they could. Growing up surrounded by cousins, grandparents, aunts, and uncles taught Esmeralda the importance of family. Even after experiencing such a painful loss at a young age, she refused to let hardship define the person she would become. As the years passed, Esmeralda developed a reputation for always seeing hope where others saw obstacles. Friends admired her optimism, while relatives often spoke about her creativity and determination. She loved working with her hands and found genuine happiness in creating things that made other people smile. That passion eventually led her to baking. What began as a simple hobby soon turned into something much bigger. Family members were amazed by the cakes and desserts she made at home, not only because they looked beautiful, but because they tasted incredible as well. Encouraged by their support, she dedicated herself to improving her skills, studying pastry techniques, practicing new recipes, and perfecting every detail until baking became more than a passion. It became her dream. Over time, that dream turned into a successful business. Esmeralda began receiving more and more orders for birthdays, celebrations, and special events throughout her community. She eventually opened a home bakery where she created custom cakes, cookies, cupcakes, cheesecakes, cake pops, and other desserts that quickly became favorites among her customers. Every order reflected the care and creativity she poured into her work. On social media, she often thanked customers for trusting her with their most important celebrations, saying each dessert carried a piece of her heart. Her bakery wasn't simply a source of income. It represented years of hard work, sacrifice, and belief that one day she could build something truly meaningful for herself and her children. By the end of 2025, Esmeralda reached a milestone she had dreamed about for years. She found the perfect location to open her very first physical bakery. Excited to share the news, she playfully teased her followers online by announcing that her home bakery was closing. Customers were shocked until the very next day, when she revealed the truth. She wasn't closing her business at all. She was expanding it. Holding the keys to her future bakery filled her with pride, because they represented countless late nights, financial struggles, and years of determination. Beyond being a successful entrepreneur, Esmeralda was also a devoted mother whose children were the center of her world. Looking from the outside, life finally seemed to be falling into place. But behind closed doors, a very different story was quietly unfolding. When Esmeralda met Omar Guzman, nothing about him immediately raised concerns among the people closest to her. He appeared respectful, successful, and caring. To her family, he seemed like someone who genuinely loved her, and over time, they built a life together and welcomed a child. From the outside, everything looked normal. Friends and relatives believed Esmeralda had found a stable relationship while continuing to grow her bakery business and care for her children. But appearances can be misleading. The man everyone thought they knew was hiding another side of himself. Behind closed doors, the relationship slowly began to change, and the woman who always smiled in public was quietly carrying a burden that almost no one around her could see. The changes didn't happen overnight. Like many abusive relationships, the warning signs appeared little by little. Omar wanted to know where Esmeralda was, who she spent time with, and who she spoke to throughout the day. At first, his behavior seemed like ordinary concern, but it gradually became controlling. He disliked her spending time with family and friends and preferred that her attention remain focused almost entirely on him. Whenever relatives visited, they noticed that he often stayed distant, avoiding conversation and creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. When they later asked Esmeralda if something was wrong, she always reassured them that everything was fine. She never wanted the people she loved to worry about what she was experiencing. As time passed, the emotional control became even stronger. Esmeralda kept most of her struggles private, believing she could manage the situation herself, or hoping things would eventually improve. Sadly, many victims make the same choice because they fear what could happen if they speak out. Eventually, the relationship reached its breaking point, and in early 2026, Esmeralda decided to end it. For her, it was the beginning of a new chapter, filled with hope and freedom. For Omar, however, it was something he refused to accept. Instead of respecting her decision, he became obsessed with regaining control over her life and refused to let the relationship truly end. After the breakup, the harassment intensified. Omar repeatedly called and messaged Esmeralda, demanding answers and accusing her of already being involved with someone else. If she didn't respond immediately, his suspicions only grew stronger. No matter where she went, he somehow seemed to know her location. At first, she thought it might simply be coincidence. But after it happened again and again, she realized something wasn't right. Determined to find an explanation, she carefully inspected her vehicle. Hidden underneath it, she discovered a GPS tracking device. The shocking discovery confirmed her worst fears. Someone had secretly been monitoring her movements, knowing exactly where she went every single day. Esmeralda immediately removed the tracker, but she understood that taking it off her car wouldn't end the danger. It only proved that the stalking was real and that Omar wasn't willing to let her move on with her life. For the first time, she truly believed she was in serious danger. She had worked too hard to build a future for herself and her children to continue living in constant fear. Determined to protect her family, she made one of the most difficult decisions a victim can make. She chose to report her former partner to the authorities. On the morning of May 13, 2026, accompanied by a trusted friend, Esmeralda walked into the gender violence unit, hoping that the legal system would finally help keep her safe. She had no idea that the most dangerous moments of her life were still ahead. After waiting for several hours, Esmeralda was finally called in to speak with investigators. She carefully explained everything she had been living through. She described the constant harassment, the threatening messages, the GPS tracker hidden on her car, and the fear that had taken over her daily life. Most importantly, she made it clear that she believed Omar was capable of hurting her. Her statement was officially recorded, and she requested legal protection to keep herself and her children safe. Authorities reviewed her complaint and presented one immediate option: a secure shelter for women facing serious danger. It was intended to provide protection, counseling, and temporary housing until the threat could be reduced. Although the shelter offered safety, accepting it came with difficult consequences. Moving there would mean leaving behind her growing bakery, pausing customer orders, and stepping away from the business she had spent years building from the ground up. It would also disrupt the lives of her children, creating uncertainty about where they would stay and how long they would remain away from home. After carefully considering everything, Esmeralda decided not to enter the shelter. Instead, she believed that filing the official complaint and documenting the threats would be enough to discourage Omar from continuing his harassment. Before leaving, she signed paperwork confirming that she had declined the shelter and then walked out of the building, believing she had finally taken the first legal step toward protecting herself. Late that afternoon, Esmeralda and her friend walked toward the parking area where her vehicle was waiting. The streets were busy, people were going about their normal routines, and nothing seemed unusual. What Esmeralda didn't realize was that Omar had been waiting nearby in a vehicle she had never seen before. Because it wasn't his usual car, she had no reason to suspect he was there. As she reached the driver's side of her vehicle, everything changed in an instant. Omar suddenly stepped out holding a handgun. The moment Esmeralda saw him, she reacted immediately. Without stopping to think, she turned and ran as fast as she could, desperately trying to escape the danger closing in behind her. Witnesses later described a terrifying scene. Esmeralda sprinted through traffic, weaving between parked vehicles, while frightened drivers watched in disbelief. Omar chased after her, firing his weapon as people scattered in every direction. Some hid behind cars, while others ran for safety. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Esmeralda kept moving, determined to survive. Across the street she spotted a small convenience store and rushed toward it, hoping she could reach safety before Omar caught up. For a brief moment, it appeared she might escape. Then his gun malfunctioned for an instant. Seizing the opportunity, Esmeralda threw her purse toward him to create a distraction before running through the entrance of the store. Inside the store, customers immediately realized something was terribly wrong and fled in panic. Esmeralda raced toward the back, searching for somewhere to hide, while Omar continued pursuing her. Within moments, he caught up to her and opened fire again. The young mother who had spent that afternoon asking authorities for protection lost her life only minutes after leaving the very office where she had reported the threats against her. After the attack, Omar turned the weapon on himself before police officers arrived at the scene. By the time emergency responders reached the store, there was nothing they could do. News of the tragedy spread quickly, leaving Esmeralda's family struggling to understand how a woman who had done everything she was supposed to do could still lose her life in such a devastating way. In the days after Esmeralda's death, her family searched through her personal belongings, hoping to understand everything she had been facing in silence. What they found was heartbreaking. Stored on her phone and tablet were photographs showing bruises and injuries she had never shared with them. The images revealed that the abuse had become physical long before she reported Omar to the authorities. Her family was devastated to learn that she had been carrying so much pain alone, while continuing to smile, care for her children, and build her bakery. Looking back, they realized she had hidden her suffering to protect the people she loved from worry. The discovery transformed their grief into a determination to tell her story and make sure her voice would never be forgotten. As more information became public, attention shifted toward what had happened inside the government office on the day Esmeralda asked for help. Officials confirmed that she had been offered a place in a secure shelter but had decided not to accept it because of the difficult impact it would have on her business and family. For her relatives, that explanation raised painful questions. They believed refusing the shelter should not have meant losing every other form of protection. Could someone have escorted her safely home? Could officers have remained outside the building? Could additional safety measures have been taken after she reported credible threats? No one can say for certain whether any of those actions would have changed the outcome, but those unanswered questions continue to haunt the people who loved her most. The case quickly attracted national attention, with journalists, legal experts, and advocates discussing the broader issues it exposed. Many emphasized that leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time in a victim's life, because an abuser may feel their control slipping away. Experts explained that domestic violence is rarely about love. Instead, it is driven by power, manipulation, and the desire to dominate another person. They stressed that warning signs such as extreme jealousy, constant monitoring, isolation from loved ones, and repeated threats should never be ignored. Recognizing these behaviors early and responding quickly can make the difference between safety and tragedy, not only for one person, but for countless families facing similar situations. Today, Esmeralda is remembered for far more than the tragic way her life ended. Her family wants the world to remember the woman she truly was: a loving mother, a talented baker, a determined entrepreneur, and someone who believed that kindness could brighten another person's day. She turned a simple passion for baking into a successful business through years of dedication and hard work. Her dream of opening a physical bakery represented hope, perseverance, and the belief that a better future was always possible. Although she never had the chance to fully realize that dream, the love she poured into her family, her customers, and her community continues to inspire everyone who knew her and everyone who hears her story. Esmeralda's story leaves behind a powerful message. Controlling behavior is not a sign of love, and threats should never be dismissed as empty words. If someone constantly monitors your movements, isolates you from the people you care about, or makes you feel afraid for your safety, those are serious warning signs that deserve immediate attention. Her courage to speak up reminds us how difficult it can be for victims to ask for help, and how important it is for families, communities, and institutions to respond with urgency and compassion. By remembering Esmeralda for the life she lived, rather than only the tragedy she endured, we honor her strength and help keep the conversation about domestic violence alive. Thank you for watching, and if this story touched you, please consider sharing it so that awareness can continue to grow.